Hey everybody, it's Coach Malcolm. So Coach Logan has been doing a bunch of super awesome, super interesting videos where he solves chess kit puzzles, and a bunch of those have been advanced and intermediate puzzles. So today I'm going to be offering some more beginner level puzzles for beginner level players, but if they seem too easy, head on over to one of Coach Logan's videos because they're very instructive. But I'm going to get started right over here. So our first puzzle right here. The first thing I noticed that's very important to notice is that there is a lot of hanging pieces that we have to take into consideration as white. So this bishop on c2 is definitely being attacked by the queen, and it is guarded by this knight on b4, but this knight on b4 is also being attacked by our pawn on a3. But what am I thinking? If I take on b4, then this queen on a5 is going to get to take my rook on a1, right? But the thing is, once I take this knight on b4, this bishop will be left hanging. So I'll get a piece, my opponent will get a rook, and then I'll get another piece. And if we do the math, that is 6 points for the cost of 5. So let's see. Pawn takes b4, queen takes rook, queen takes c2, and that is correct. Okay, so we got 2 pieces for a rook, which is a very good trade. And in the rest of this game, if we got to keep playing, we would castle, develop this bishop, and we are much better off. All right. Let's see. Here is our next puzzle. It looks like the material is relatively equal. Okay. And I think we are going for a fork in this position. Okay. So we don't have a fork right now, but we have to set up our fork with forcing moves. So what's the strongest kind of forcing move? It is a check. So after we play this move, rook h1, the king's only square to move to is e2, and now we have very nicely placed him and this bishop in a perfect knight's distance apart from each other, and we will just be up a piece in the end game and be able to win. So this puzzle is all about just being able to notice. When I see this position, automatically I want to fork the king and and the bishop, but we can't, so we have to move that rook to h1 to put him in the right position. All right, let's see our next puzzle right here. Here we are, let's see, we are down a piece and we are down 2 pawns also, so that's definitely a problem. So we're either going for checkmate or we are trying to win some more material in this game. Let's take a look. I'm looking at this move rook f8 because it's an immediate check and it forces, I always look for forcing moves first, but the things that I'm seeing are they can block with something like knight f4, they can block with bishop f6, and then it is a little bit harder. But here, obviously, look at me, I'm just missing our easy tactic. We have a discovered check where we can win this queen. So this king is on f1, the queen is hanging. That should have been the first thing that I noticed. After bishop takes g2, the king is placed in check. The king has to take, the queen cannot be saved, and we will just take on e6 with our queen. All right, so here again we have a very equal endgame position. We both have 2 rooks, but in this position, what we are going to do is we are going to force black into an uncomfortable spot. So since he's on the back rank, he does not have a lot of options. So once we play rook a8 check, if this rook moved back to d8, we would just be able to take it. The king's only other option is to go king e7, and I want to stop and see if we can see this threat. We can force this king into a skewer with his own rook in 2 moves. So take a second or 2 to try and see that. All right, so we play rook takes d7. The king's only option is to take back his rook, rook a7, skewer that king, and then this rook on h7 is free. All right, so let us look at our next puzzle. So here we have a classic fork, okay? So it's important to notice this diagonal right here because this king is open, he's open to checks, and this knight is smack in the center of the board without any protection. So how can we fork the king and this knight in 1 move and win a whole piece in the very beginning of the game? Right, queen a5, attacking the king, attacking the knight. We'll pick up this piece, develop our pieces, make sure we castle our king, and be up a piece for the whole rest of the game. All right, next puzzle, what do we got? Again, a pretty equal position that we're dealing with here. Looks like a middle game, but we have the power of the pin on our side. So even though this pawn isn't technically pinned right now because it's our queen, If we get to move this queen out of the way, the pawn will be pinned because our rook on d7 will be attacking that queen. So how can we take advantage of this pin that's coming up? We play queen takes c7. Now, if the pawn takes back, we will take the queen on d3, and we did lose our queen, but remember we took that rook on c5, and now we get to take this rook on d3, so we got 2 rooks for the price of 1, and we are up a rook in this game, and it went straight from a middle game to a winning endgame that we will be successful in. All right. Next puzzle we got here, queen g7. Again, a pretty equal game. It looks like it. Our rook on h8 is being attacked, and so is our knight on e5, but our knight on e5 is protected by the queen. But again, we have a position very similar to the one we had with the king on f1 and the queen on e6. This queen is unprotected, and we have a discovered check here to win this unprotected queen on g7. How can we do it? Right? Knight f3 check. We check that king. It's a forcing move. They must take back or move their king to h1, but obviously they're going to take back. And now we can take this queen on g7 for free. All right, let's take a look at our next puzzle. We are down the exchange in this endgame right now, but it looks like after we play queen h7 check, we force this king to e6, and now we have checkmate in 1 move. Where is our checkmate in 1? Notice how many squares this bishop is guarding and how effective this pawn is at guarding the squares around the king as well. So yes, checkmate in 1, queen g6, and we will easily win the game. And let's just go back for a second. After our rook is taken, if queen h7 and this king moved back to e8, queen g8 would have been checkmate as well. So king e6 or king e8 will lead to checkmate, unfortunately for black, but fortunately for us. So here it looks like the material is pretty equal. This knight on d6 is hanging. So can we take this knight on d6? That is the question, I believe, for this puzzle. And I think the answer is yes, because our knight is guarding on e5. So let's see. King takes d6. We can, and it's because the knight guards e5, so the queen cannot take, and this pawn is guarding g6, so the rook will not be able to attack. So this is basically a puzzle about, can we take that free piece? Because we don't always want to pick up hanging material if there are threats, but in this case, we are able to protect ourselves. And if we got free material to take, let's take it. All right. Next puzzle, again, a pretty equal position. This puzzle isn't too hard. Black has attacked our queen, but when their queen moved away from c7, she abandoned this knight on e7. So how can we win this knight on e7? If we immediately took with our bishop, then we would simply lose our queen. So first, we have to put our queen to safety or get her off the board. So queen takes c3, black is forced to take back. Bishop takes e7, we won a piece, and we will be able to win this game as well. All right, let's do a few more. So queen d7, in this position, we are taking advantage of this diagonal with the queen and the king. So how can we win material? We need to skewer this or pin this queen to the king so that she is in trouble. So we play bishop b5, attacking that queen. Black's only hope is to go knight c6. That's what I expected. Blocking the way, but we have 1, 2, 3 attackers on that knight, only 2 defenders. So what are we going to take with? Let's take a second, think about it. Yes, we're going to take with the knight because we want the pawn to take back. And if the pawn took back, then we play bishop takes, and this queen will be in a lot of trouble, and we will be able to win that queen because she can't move anywhere because she is pinned because the king is right behind her, and she will probably have to take on c6, and then queen takes c6. We will win that queen. All right. Next puzzle, pawn to e5. Let's see, we are down an exchange, but it looks like we have 3 pawns and a piece. So we're actually up 1 point, but how can we go on to win this position? Let's see. Oh, here we go. The key to this position is this bishop on b3 is attacking this bishop on f7, and this bishop on f7, while if it was black's turn again, they could take on b3. It is pinned from moving anywhere else on this diagonal because of the king. So how can we force black to, it is a checkmate in 2 in this position. See if you can take a minute, solve it on your own. Right, rook b8. Black cannot play bishop e8 because their bishop is pinned. They have to go rook e8. Not only do they lose a rook, but this is actually checkmate again because their bishop cannot take on e8 because he is pinned to the black king on g8. All right, let's do 2 more. So king c2. Here we have we are down an exchange for real in this position, an exchange and a pawn. Again, if you're confused on what an exchange means, it means when you have a minor piece like a knight or a bishop for a rook. So you have 3 points for 5, but black actually has 6 for our 3 points here in this position. But let's see what we can do. It looks like we will be able to win one of these rooks. And the way we're going to do that is this king is overworked. He's guarding the rook on d1 and the rook on b2, both which are attacked by our queen. So we're going to draw him off one of these rooks, and we are going to do that with the power of a rook on an open file. Rook c8 check. If the king went to b3, we would take on d1, but this king chooses to go to d2, and now we're going to take this rook on b2. All right. Last puzzle now. Rook takes d6. It looks like we're down 2 pawns in this endgame, but we have a pawn on c2, so very close to promoting. So how are we going to win? I believe what we are going to do here is we want our rook to end up on b1. So how are we going to get our rook there? We are going to take on b4, threatening to go to b1, and we can still play rook b1 here, and that rook is in a lot of trouble. If this rook comes back to d1, we'll obviously take and promote to a queen. If this rook takes on b1, then pawn takes b1, and we will promote to a queen there as well. And if rook takes c2, then rook takes c2, and we will be up a rook. So this is a completely winning endgame for black. All right, guys, that's all the puzzles that I'm going to be doing for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.